Hello and welcome to the first MUNPR Politics Podcast bonus episode. In this episode, we have interviews with all our candidates for each office. There are timestamps in the description for each individual interview, but I would recommend that you listen to all of them so you can hear the candidates in their own words. A word before we start, I apologize for the great disparity in audio quality between the different interviews. They were conducted in a variety of locations, and some have more background noise than others. Ollie McQueen's has the most background noise, but even then you can still clearly hear everything she says, so it's not too big of an issue. The Secretary General interview is first, followed by Communications Director, then Membership Chair, then Vice President, then President, and Lauren Turner's interview is at the end. Again, they are no longer running, but it was my favorite of the interviews, no offense to the other candidates, and I couldn't not include it. Without any further ado, here is the interview with Ethan Lindsey. Unfortunately, there was not a time where Ethan, Lindsey, and I were both available to record his interview, but I did text him the interview questions, and I do have his responses here. So the first question was, in a word, what is your vision for Volmont 11? Ethan responded, money. Question 2, why do you want to be Secretary General? Ethan responded, because Volmont holds a very special place in my heart as something I've been doing since high school, and I want to see it continue as a staple of our club. Question 3, the only issue of concern raised by voters related to Volmont was ensuring that you have enough time availability to properly commit to the conference. Would you be able to devote sufficient time to the conference as Secretary General? Ethan responded, well, I've done it before on a busier schedule. Question 4, what do you think is your strongest quality as a Secretary General, and what do you think is your weakest? Ethan responded, I'm competent, the weakness being I'm a people pleaser. Question 5, are there any major reforms you'd like to make for Volmont 11, given your experience as USG at Volmont 10? Ethan responded, figuring out catering options for delegates and staff, hopefully the new Chick-fil-A will help with this, also making the Dell Link system better for staff and launching it for schools. More training, more training, more training. Question 6, what would you like your legacy to be as Volmont Secretary General? He responded, streamlining it as much as possible to make it easily replaceable for years to come with less administrative burden on everyone. That was the interview with Ethan Lindsey, who is going to be on the ballot for whether or not he will be confirmed as Secretary General. Hello, my name is Caleb Lance. Welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. This is the first in our series of interviews with Communications Director candidates, and my guest today is Mary Helen Schow. Welcome to the show, Mary Helen.
That's not how you say my last name.
Is that not how you say it?
No.
I'm so sorry. That's how I've said it for like 3 years.
No, everyone assumes that's how you say it because that's how you say most SCH last names. It's like Schow.
Schow?
Like school.
Okay, noted.
No, but like that's not abnormal for most people.
I will correct that in the next podcast. Mary Helen Schow, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone.
Alrighty, so we'll just go ahead and get right into it then. All right, so why did you choose to run for office and why specifically Communications Director?
So I decided to run for office because last semester, which was last year, we had an open position for comms director, and I honestly didn't think I was ever going to run for office in Model UN, but when I saw the open position and I knew it was something that would speak to my skill sets, I decided it would be a good idea for me to run just because I felt like it was something that I could perform well at, and it was something that I felt like the club could be strongly improved for. Other positions, I think, have been done. I'm not going to dog on execution of the position. That's mean. Sorry.
Okay.
I just felt like there were things that I could do to improve the role. And the reason I'm running again is because I feel like I have a lot of ideas on how to rebrand our social media, Instagram specifically. And I really have a passion that this merch could be something that people wear on the day-to-day. I think right now the merch is something that's just kind of, oh, we have shirts, and I think they could actually be wearable designs that are comfortable and stylish for everyone who's in the club, not just something that you wear to paint in or to bed, which I feel like is somewhat now what's going on with our merch.
For sure, yeah, definitely. As you may have seen, UTK MUN was recently eliminated in the first round of MUN Madness by UC Berkeley, a team with a much more dynamic online presence than UTK. How would you change our social media presence to better compete with teams like Georgia, Berkeley, and Florida?
My last campaign, I actually looked at a lot of the other social media accounts and had some strong ideas about how we could reformat our social media to be more engaging. But since then, I've decided to shift my focus to making our social media stand out more. So what I've been looking at for marketing purposes is actually our school's sports accounts. I feel like they do a really good job of incorporating that Vol spirit along with what they're trying to get across. Obviously, it's not going to be like a copycat of a sports account, but I think we need to do more graphics that are engaging. I think we need to have posts that actually are interesting. I want multiple forms of media, including reels and graphics and just regular pictures. I think that variety will stand out. And I also just think we need a more cohesive look when it comes to our page, because right now it's just kind of the same template. I think we need more variety.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So what qualifications do you have for communications director? I know you mentioned that you ran last time, but do you have any experience in social media management or design?
Yeah, so in high school, I don't remember what it was called. I was the executive board liaison between our nuts and bolts committee and our executive board. For our nuts and bolts committee was our social media committee for our student council in high school. So I had a lot of experience with that and just overseeing a lot of that. But then also I run the University of Tennessee Kimmy Carr social media account right now, which we don't even do that much for it. We normally just post when we're at competitions because it's a club that is more so focused on actual science rather than getting people engaged, because you basically are in the major if you're in the club, and it's more word of mouth transmission. But I do have a lot of experience with things like that. As for merch design, I have a little bit of experience because I did design some mock-ups for last year, and then as well as some for my Kimmy Carr team. I have more ideas that I think are even stronger this semester for merch. I think that that's something that speaks for itself. I think people will see my designs and know that I'm qualified for this position because I do have confidence that people will like the designs that I've created.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. Definitely looking forward to seeing them. So we just talked about merch. So what would you specifically change about this year's merch, and what would you keep the same?
What's most important to me is quality. I think right now the shirts could be higher quality. I want to look into different ways of getting the merch through different companies. I'm a big fan of comfort colors, but I know that those can sometimes be more expensive. So I plan to work with the other members of the executive team to figure out a budget that works for everyone. And I do know some companies that are Knoxville sourced. Threads is one where my friend from high school's parents own that. So I would look into that. They always did our cheer merch in high school, as well as I've talked to Sam Payne about some companies that the Democratic Party uses. So I definitely want to change the material. As for design, I like that we use the logo a lot, but I think there's a lot more that could be done with modern designs. I think I really like the embroidered look, even if something isn't embroidered, where the font is very gender neutral but still very sophisticated. I want the shirts to look like something that you bought for yourself, not something that you were given, because I think that's how people will actually want to wear them. And I also want more options. So maybe that will be paid options for sweatshirts, hats, etc. I think that's something I'll have to look more into, especially since a lot of those companies you have to have a minimum amount of people buy stuff to actually get the order through. So that's something that will have to be based on club engagement.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. More merch, always a popular idea. So what do you think is your strongest quality as a candidate, and what do you think is your weakest?
I think my strongest quality is that I think I'm approaching this role in a way where it's very specific to the role. I'm not running for something because I just want a leadership position. In fact, I'm running for this position because I think I could excel in it, not because I just want power. I think it's important that you have a passion for whatever you're doing and you actually think you can make a change. I think that's the only way to truly succeed at something, because it gives you the motivation to actually excel in it. And I think that is something that's going to set me apart from other candidates, as well as I think I have a lot of experience with different types of clubs. I'm involved in academic clubs as well as social clubs. And in high school, I was on a sports team as well as multiple academic and social clubs. I think that variety to different types of people will help me to take into account everyone's perspectives and create something that everyone will enjoy regardless of who you are. As for my weakest part, I am a chemical engineering major. I have always made time for the things that matter to me, and this will be something that matters to me, but I do have a schedule that's very demanding. I will have classes that take up a lot of my time, so I can't always be at every single social event or meeting because of that, but I promise that will not detract from my abilities at executing this position. I will ensure I have the ability to get the photos I need, put stuff out on time, and create stuff in a timely manner, even if my schedule is demanding, because I do that already with the other stuff I'm in.
Yep, for sure. So networking is a critical skill for Model UN, especially for exec members and especially for the communications director. What circuit connections do you have with other MUN teams, and how would you use those connections to benefit the club?
You mean like other? Yeah,
just people you know at other schools on Model UN teams or other Model UN teams that you've been in contact with, or.
Well, my twin sister Caroline is actually a member of the Rhodes MUN team. She'll be there the same amount of time as I will because we're twins. So I know her, and I know she knows some people in other MUN circuits. I'm not very well traveled when it comes to MUN, so that is something that I'm planning on maybe traveling once or twice next semester, but it's just not something that I always have time for due to my demanding schedule. So I do have some connections with Caroline for that, but I think my strong suit will be with the networking within our club. I think I'm willing to talk to anyone. I'm willing to, I like to think I'm a very approachable person. So I think that my ability to connect with people on our team and figure out what they want from this will be really valuable in this position.
For sure. So of your, as you know, our elections use ranked choice voting. So of your three opponents, Avery, Sinclair, Jenny Lynn, and Reagan Murphy, who do you plan to vote for your second choice?
I think that I'm going to base that a lot off of the platforms that I see coming out. I don't think that a lot of that has been dispersed yet. And I'm someone who is going to value seeing it in person. I think merch and social media is something very tangible. You can see the skills of the person running based off of the designs that they actually output. And I'm not going to decide on that based off of who I like the most or who I am the closest with. I'm going to base that purely off of who I think has the skill set to excel at the position.
For sure. So on our last poll, we had the option for people to put in what their biggest concerns were for each position moving forward. And for communications director, the most popular answers were an improved social media presence and cooler merch. So we've talked a little bit about both of those things, but what specific plans do you have for those issues?
So for better social media presence, I think we need to post more and post higher quality posts. I think the photo quality at different events is very low, and I think that directly correlates to our poor social media presence. When you don't have good pictures to post, you can't post good posts. And even when I've created some of my mock-ups, that's an issue I've run into, is like the best quality photos we have are really just from the conferences that we put on ourselves, and that's because we have a photo team. So whether that be reaching out to other conferences that we attend to get some of the photos like we take, or whether that be actually bringing cameras that are real cameras to social functions and or other events, I think that is something that needs to be addressed. Again, I want different types of media, not just regular, we traveled here, this is Volmun Monday, whatever. I want variety. I think there are multiple ways we can be posting more. We never post for Who Wins Spoons Assassins, which I think is a very marketable part of our club, is that we have these fun little things that we do and no one knows about them because we really don't post them. And then I also think we can just post our stats. If we have award winners, we need to showcase that. If we have people if we're putting on a conference, we really advertise that. As for merch, I've talked about it. I think my merch is going to speak for itself. I think we need sweatshirt options. I think we need cooler designs that are more college student friendly, that actually are something that people want to wear. I think that is correlated a lot to the color of the merch and the material of the merch, but it's also the designs. And I think for years now we've been doing kind of the same logo on the front with a pocket and like little design on the back. I think we can venture more into other categories of like different types of shirts, like maybe not a pocket shirt, maybe a design on the front with nothing on the back. Sometimes simpler is better. I don't know. I'm going to put out polls, see what people like. I'm going to come up with a lot of designs, figure out where people like it, and go that direction.
Yeah, solid. The spoon assassins, I hadn't thought about that before, but I think that's a good point. It's at least according to whatever office it was that thought it was hazing, it seems to be one of the more important aspects of the UN. So one last question. Will you accept the results of the election if you lose?
Of course.
Okay. Wonderful. That's what we want to hear. All right, Mary Helen, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to wrap up here, but first, the floor is yours for 45 seconds. What's your message to voters?
Well, I think I'm going to take these 45 seconds to really get myself. I feel like I've talked a lot about my platform, but I really want y'all to know who I am as a person. I am a junior in chemical engineering. Next year, I'll be a senior. I have a minor in chemistry, and I'm involved in a lot of research. So if you're a science person and you want to get more involved with that, come talk to me. I'm a chatter. I love talking to people. So if you ever have anything you want to talk about with me, if I do win this position, that is something that I'm completely open to. I think right now we're lacking a lot of communication. See, that's what I'm running for. When it comes to what people want, I feel like people aren't very direct. I'm very direct, not in a disrespectful way. I'm very honest, but while keeping it respectful. I think that's something that this club can improve upon, and I plan to improve upon that.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And we will have more interviews with the other candidates moving forward. Hello and welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. I'm Caleb Lance. This is the second in our series of interviews with our communications director candidates. I'm joined today by Miss Reagan Murphy. Reagan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started with the questions.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Reagan. I'm a freshman here at UTK. This is actually technically my third semester in UTK MUN. I'm a political science major with an international affairs concentration, and I'm also a journalism major with a news concentration and a minor in American civics. When I am not participating in MUN, you can find me oftentimes running around campus quite literally and figuratively, just trying to get involved in anything I can.
Awesome. Wonderful. So we'll start with one of the general questions. So why did you choose to run for office, and why specifically communications director?
I feel like, so my big thing, especially with running for this position, is that there has been a great job done by the previous communications directors, and I think that there's been a great effort towards finally expanding our social media presence. But I would love to expand our physical presence on campus as well. MUN typically has a reputation for being a male-only dominated club, and I really would love to expand that and especially start collaborating with more clubs around campus and just kind of see what we can do to partner with other people who may be equally interested in some of these ideas, especially international topics. There's a lot of people around campus, especially with current politics, that would love to hear a little bit more, get a little bit more involved. So that's what kind of communication and collaboration are my big things with running for this position.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. So as you may have seen, UTK MUN was recently eliminated in the first round of MUN Madness by UC Berkeley, a team with a much more dynamic online presence than UTK. How would you change our social media presence to better compete with teams like Georgia, Berkeley, and Florida?
I first want to congratulate Kripa Patel for her job currently as the communications director. She's done a lot towards trying to increase our presence, especially with a lot of the funny reels and trends going around and really trying to get UT members involved. And I think we really need to start pushing that more. We need to start posting more, and that's a really, really big thing. And I think we also need to start celebrating the achievements of MUN members as well, and kind of making it clear that we are a competitive group. And even though we may be smaller than a lot of these big universities, we are competitive, we are very smart, we're witty, we're skilled, and it's important that we put that out there.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
So what qualifications do you have for communications director?
So I know as a freshman I don't have as much experience currently on campus, but in high school I was in charge of a plethora of clubs and activities. In high school I held a position for 3 years in SGA, whether that be the VP of events or the VP of fundraising. Both of those required collaboration with different organizations on campus and really doing a lot with marketing as well. In addition, I was also the head ambassador for my high school ambassador program, so that again required a lot of connecting with people, seeing what we could do to improve both our current situation locally, see what we could do to improve for future students as well. I've also been involved in clubs since I was a sophomore in high school, and so this is not my first time around the sun doing anything MUN related, so I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable with the field itself, and I really would love to just share that with other people.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So merch is a huge portion of the responsibility of the crisis director. What would you change and what would you keep the same about this year's merch?
I'm going to be so honest, I'm not a big fan of white merch. I just feel like it gets really dirty. And so I think I would definitely start expanding colors and designs, especially because I helped out spring of 2024 with Volman then, and the merch has been the same since then and before that whenever I was competing as a high schooler. So I think we really need some different designs, maybe some quarter zips, some, something that isn't just Ayers Hall, as cool as it is, just adding a little bit more pizzazz in it, a little bit more spice, just something to give people just a little bit more options to kind of represent the club that we know and love.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely a strong idea. So what do you think is your strongest quality as a candidate, and what do you think is your weakest?
I think that my strongest quality definitely has to be my leadership. I'm very confident in what I do and in the choices I make. And I know oftentimes there isn't a lot of time to go back and fix something, especially with something like communication, especially whenever it comes to social media. Once you kind of post it out there, it's there for everyone to see. And especially once you start reaching out to clubs and doing collaborative events with them, it's kind of hard to get smaller once your club starts expanding. And I'm really confident in that with myself and the organization skills I've gained from previous leadership experiences.
Awesome, for sure. Okay, so networking is a critical skill for MUN, especially for exec members, and especially for the communications director. What circuits connections do you have with other MUN teams, and how would you use those connections to benefit the club?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming from Knoxville, I have a lot of communication with a lot of people, both from my own high school that graduated, whether it be alumni or current members, as well as people from local high schools as well, and they're graduating. Because of that, I have a lot of connections with people from American University, NYU, UCLA, and a lot of the larger schools that have previously worked with me and that I can safely and confidently call my friend. They're not just an acquaintance, they're someone that whenever they come home from college, we go out and we get coffee together, we talk, we catch up, and I know that they would be happy to help run scrimmages with us even whenever they are home or kind of just give us advice, and I just feel really confident there. I also have a lot of connections on campus with some of the other political clubs. I'm a exec member for Women in Politics, as well as a member of Kappa Alpha Pi, which is the pre-law fraternity on campus, as well as being very involved in my sorority.
Awesome, definitely. So as you know, our elections are ranked choice voting. So who will you be marking as your second choice for communications director on election night?
I have to say that I think Avery is a very safe choice should she continue with the position.
Would you like to say more on that? You don't have to. You can leave it there if you want to.
I think Avery is really, really great at getting everyone involved, especially in a lot of the scrimmages we do. She's very, very funny. She has a lot of connections, and she knows how to work a crowd. And I think that's so incredibly important. So if I were not to vote for myself, I would absolutely vote for her.
Awesome. Okay. So the biggest concerns for this position that voters marked on the last poll were a larger and improved social media presence and cooler merch. Do you have any ideas or plans for these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think personally myself, I've been working to grow my social media presence a little bit, especially looking and reflecting on my own Instagram and my own TikTok and kind of seeing what I can do to cater more to a viewer's mindset. And because of that, and because of my background in photography, just kind of my knowledge of those sort of things, I feel like I can safely edit videos. I know how this works. I've actually kind of on the down low. I have some vlogs in the back pocket that I've been maybe waiting to post on YouTube, but that's content that I'm comfortable with creating and putting out there and making it fun and enjoyable and honestly fun for the people to create as well. So that's a really big thing for me. As far as the merch, I feel pretty safe with designing new merch. I'm pretty comfortable also reaching out to other people who maybe are more talented in the graphic design aspect, making sure that we are able to develop and design and distribute merch that makes everyone happy and maybe is a little bit of a change up from previous items that were given out. And especially like looking at things like buttons or maybe hats or something to where it's a little bit different than just a pullover and a shirt.
Yeah, definitely. So one last question. Will you accept the results of the election if you lose?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. All right, Reagan, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to wrap up here, but first, the floor is yours for the next 45 seconds. What's your message to voters?
I just want to say thank you so much for even considering me. It's so means a lot to me, and I just wanted to say that as your potential communications director, I think it's so important that we collaborate and we connect with a lot of other organizations on campus. And I think this goes beyond just the MUN scope. This goes to other Greek life organizations, to other political organizations, anything that we can get ourselves involved in and make our presence known and kind of diversify our audience. Thank you so much again for having me, Caleb.
Of course. Glad to have you on the show. All right. We'll have more interviews with the other communications director candidates and all of the other candidates for each office as well in future episodes. Hello and welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. I'm Caleb Lance, and this is one of our interviews in our series with the membership chair candidates. I'm joined today by Avery Sinclair. Say hi, Avery.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners while I get the questions pulled up?
Hello, my name is Avery Sinclair. I'm a freshman here at UT. This is my second semester in MUN. I'm very excited to be running for something.
Awesome. So why did you choose to run for office and why membership chair, specifically? I
chose to run for membership chair because I think it's fun to have the party position in a leadership role. I don't really care that much for social media, and I just feel like vice president and president those are very, very serious roles. So if I had to be in an elected position, I'd want to be membership chair.
Yeah, definitely understandable. So the membership chair, as you know, is largely responsible for all of the club's social events and outings. What is one event or outing that the club has not done that you would organize if elected?
I would definitely... I don't know if this has been done before. I think it'd be fun to take a MUN trip to Dollywood. I think that'd be so fun.
We usually do one of those about once a year, usually at the cabin trip.
Oh, okay. Then I'm gonna have to brainstorm something else. This is hard. Maybe a potluck. That'd be so fun.
A potluck? Yeah, that'd be we did a Friendsgiving a couple years ago, but only 3 people brought food. So what qualifications do you have for membership chair?
I've planned a good amount of parties in my lifetime. I used to work at a kid's birthday party place, and we would have to plan the parties out and decorate them and stuff. I plan social events sometimes, and I think they turn out pretty well, when people show up.
Definitely. So aside from the engagement fairs once a semester, UTK-MUN is not particularly involved with the broader campus community. How would you better integrate us into the wider university ecosystem?
I would definitely put more flyers up around campus. I would try to get Model UN's name more popular across the school. I feel like there's not much there needs to be more done to get the club known around campus. And so definitely just going to more things involving the club and more things and collabing with other clubs and organizations would help.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So what do you think is your strongest quality as a candidate and what do you think is your weakest?
I think my strongest quality as a candidate is that I would say I'm pretty involved at the club and I would care a lot about my role. I would put a lot of time into it. I'd say my weakest role, this is probably not something good if you are running for a social thing. I kind of have really bad social anxiety, so that could definitely be a problem.
I don't think it's necessarily a problem. So what's your best idea for a social thing that we haven't done before? If we did it before your time here, I'll let you know.
I think a fun social theme would be, this would definitely be like a drunk one where everyone like dresses up and acts like someone else in the club.
Yes, I agree. That was tossed around a couple years ago, but we never did it.
I think that'd be so funny.
Yeah,
or either
I
that
agree.
or everyone has to dress up and impersonate like a famous like politician or like historical figure. Either one of those would be really fun.
A dress-up social for sure. So as you know, our elections use ranked choice voting. So who will you be marking for? Actually, I guess that's not a question. There's only one other candidate. So I guess you'll be marking Lauren Turner as your second choice.
Yes, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Wonderful. Okay, so some of voters' biggest concerns in the membership chair race were member retention, adding more opportunities for engagement, and having more social events. What's your strategy to tackle each of these issues?
Definitely just plan more social events. I think it's fun to hang out with people, and I like everyone in Model UN. So I would want to like make more social events. I'd say for more like campus like involvement, like getting more people, I say like just like hanging more flyers around campus, going to more like school events, like all the engagement fairs. Like I feel like, how many have we been to this school year?
I believe just two, just the summer and winter, or fall and spring engagement fairs.
Okay, I feel like there's more engagement. Just like any time, like any place that we can get involved in, I would go to, because there's a lot, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. So one last question. Will you accept the results of the election if you lose?
No.
Okay, wonderful.
Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. If Lauren wins, I'd be really happy.
Okay, awesome. All right, Avery, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank
We're going to wrap
you.
up here, but first the floor is yours for the next 45 seconds. What's your message to voters?
My message to voters is vote for what you think will make you happy and what will be best for the club. I think that like all the candidates are great people and I love them all. And I just think no matter what, the most important thing is that everyone in MUN stays friends and we can all have fun together.
Absolutely. Friendship is magic. Once again, thank you for coming on the show, Avery. Stay tuned. Later in this episode, we'll have the rest of the interviews with our candidates. Okay. Hello and welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. I'm Caleb Lance, and this is another in our series of interviews with our vice presidential candidates. I'm joined today by Will St. Clair. Will, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners while I get the questions pulled up here?
Yeah, my name is William St. Clair. I'm a public health major here. I'm a junior. I just completed my first year in the club, but I think I was pretty active, so I hope most people know me.
Yeah, for sure. So why did you choose to run for office, and why vice president specifically?
Well, I think part of it was being in the club and like having gone through all the practices and seeing like what really worked, what didn't, especially as somebody who came in with no prior MUN knowledge. I think I was able to see what was more effective and what was less effective, especially when considering my time on the circuit. I think also part of it is just to make sure that nobody's running uncontested.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah, definitely. As you noted, the vice president is essentially our team's travel coach.
Yeah.
What is one lesson you've learned from a conference that you would impart on the team?
Yeah, I think, it's been a lot. I've been doing a lot of specs recently, so kind of seeing both sides, GA and crisis, and learning how to integrate that. A lot of improvisational thinking is something that I think would be worth focusing on in the future. Because especially like as those updates keep getting brought out, both in crisis and spec GAs, you need to be able to quickly come up with a way to integrate that into your platform and make yourself the center of attention on that issue. So kind of bringing in that improvisational side, and also making sure that people are like aware of what you need to do when it comes to like actually competing. I think when I was going into my first conference, I'd done one scrimmage and it was on Slack. So like I think one thing that I would prioritize is having those scrimmages to give people that like actual in-room practice, like how to make motions, how to be on your feet and be active so that the chairs notice you.
Yeah, for sure. So what qualifications do you have for vice president?
I think obviously I'm not as successful on the circuit as some people are. But I don't think that's necessarily an issue. I'm currently vice president for Habitat for Humanity, so that's kind of like a big leadership role that I have on campus. Obviously, most people in this club have some level of leadership skill, kind of necessary to be a good competitor in the circuit. But I think overall, it's just I think I have really good interpersonal skills too. I like working with people and helping them develop the things that they want to develop. So I just really like working with people.
For sure. So along with ability as a delegate, the most important qualification for vice president is a good teaching ability. What experience do you have in this regard, and how would you put it to work to improve the team?
Oh yeah, I mean, in like starting from high school, like I would tutor people for free for the ACT just because I enjoyed it. Like helping people with homework, helping people like, I really enjoy the process of working with somebody and finding like what they're good at, helping them emphasize that while also finding those weaknesses and like, you know, really working on the ways to strengthen those points. It's what I've been doing all year. It's like every time I go to a conference, am I winning? No, but I'm seeing the points where I'm missing, seeing the points that I'm missing and like actively like working on being better at those at the next conference.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think is your strongest quality as a candidate, and what do you think is your weakest?
I mean, weakest is obviously just like success on the circuit. Didn't win anything, which is a little rough. But I think the strongest, I'm willing to challenge myself to anything. I have done Spat Hawk and UNSC to end the year, and I think those were like massive learning moments for me. And it's something that I would encourage other people to do, to learn, like who you are as a person and like how to, like where your strengths and weaknesses lie. I think that's kind of taught me that I am a much better like front room speaker than I am working in unmods, and that's something that like I would want to work on in the future. So I guess like my overall strength is like being able to see my own flaws and work on them.
Yeah, for sure. So our last two vice presidents both instituted major changes to our training program. What would you change about the current program, and please be as mean as you want?
I think the biggest thing is like actually creating a process to learn not just what MUN is at the start of the year for the first years, but also like the collegiate MUN circuit, like learning what it really means to how to win, I guess. I think part of that is like doing scrimmages, doing even like full weekend scrimmages, which might be like a little time consuming for some people, but it's also a really good chance to see how developing a full arc works rather than getting that accelerated 6-hour arc. I think it's doing more GA training, because I went into Sunmun and a spec GA having no clue what GA, like at all the process of GA. And so it's making a more balanced system, but also making it a little bit more intense while also to some degree trying to maintain the fun of it.
Yeah, for sure. As you know, our elections are ranked choice voting. So of your two opponents, Zane Howard, Nathanael Barnett, who will you be marking as your second choice on election night?
Nathanael. Zane is already committed to being SecGen for Volmon, and I think Nathanael is pretty clearly the front runner, or not even front runner, but best candidate. So the vice president is also in charge of the planning of our scrimmages. Do you have any planned reforms for our scrimmage system? If so, what are they? Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it a little bit, doing that full weekend, like 2-day, 2 sessions per day scrimmage type setup where you can like actually get into the weeds of like what being in session feels like, at least to some degree. I think that on top of possibly even doing some kind of awards, like awards beyond just like traditional like best L, outstanding, honorable mentions and all that, like adding some kind of financial incentive just to increase competition a little bit more and like really allow people to come out, and not to say like it's the current scrimmages are unserious, but they kind of are. So like making sure people are being serious in scrimmages and really competing. I think that would be the biggest thing. And then secondarily adding GA scrimmage each semester, like 1 day, easy topic, fun topic.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a long one, so bear with me.
Okay.
According to the Constitution as it stands today, it is the responsibility of the Vice President, in consultation with the President, to decide the travel schedule each year. Previous Vice Presidents have used a variety of different methods to decide which conferences we go to, including holding a club vote, repeating the previous year's schedule automatically, or sitting down one-on-one with the President and deciding it just the two of them. How would you choose our schedule, and are there any conferences we went to this year that you would not want to return to? Perhaps one that we attended this previous weekend, or any we didn't attend that you would like to?
Absolutely. So I think I would just maintain the status quo of voting, but I would like to see us split up voting fall and spring semesters. Allow the first years to have some involvement in the club early on with what spring conferences we go to. As for conferences I wouldn't return to, right now it's Chapel Hill and Chomun, UNC, Unk-Munk and Chomun. Just not the best experiences either time. Conferences to add, I would like to consider returning to Money. It's a close enough conference. Atlanta's not the most expensive place to visit. Bird Monk is another consideration for next semester.
Where is Bird Monk?
Blacksburg, Virginia Tech. Yeah.
Virginia Tech, got it.
They're also close. They took a shot on us for 10-1, so might as well return the favor for Bird Monk too.
Yeah.
Same thing for Hoosier Mun at Indiana. That's another one that is worth considering. It's only about 5.5 hours, I think. So it's pretty close. They took a shot on us, so why don't we take a shot on them type situation. And then a conference that is going to be a heavy consideration, I think, is Sunmun, just because distance versus like who wants to go to that, who's willing to drive to that. Is it worth us going there?
Yeah, for sure. So voters expressed a desire to see UTK Mun return to the best delegate top 20 list as we were in the spring of 2022. How would you accomplish this?
I think the biggest thing is starting with shrinking the travel teams. Not drastically. I still think that everyone should have the chance to travel. I think that's the best part of MUN, but that's my personal experience. But making it so that people are fighting a little bit harder to get those spots, so that, and starting to develop those skills in the practices, in the scrimmages, so that they're like actually competitive for the teams that we're sending out. I think that plus just like being a little bit more serious about who we send to certain conferences would make a big difference. I think that there's certainly party conferences that people want to go to, and I think that should definitely be a thing we do, but taking a more serious team to the more serious conferences.
Yeah, for sure. So one final question. Will you accept the results of the election if you lose?
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Here. All right, Will, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to wrap up here, but first, the floor is yours for the next 45 seconds. What's your message to voters?
Vote for who you feel like. I'm not going to be butthurt over this. I think that there's a lot of great candidates. I can't argue with you if you vote for somebody else. There's plenty of qualified people in this election, so.
Yeah, well, once again, thanks, Will, for coming on the show. Stay tuned, and we'll have the rest of the interviews with our other candidates. Hello, and welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. I'm Caleb Lance, and this is the next in our series of interviews with our vice presidential candidates. I'm joined today by Nathanael Barnett. Nathanael, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. I've been listening to the MUNPR podcast for about 3 weeks now, and it just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, glad to have a day one fan on the show. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself while I get these questions pulled up.
Perfect. So I'm Nathanael Barnett. I'm a sophomore here at UT, studying double majoring in marketing and history on a pre-law track. I've been in the club for 4 semesters, so my 2 years here, but I also went to Valmont as a high schooler since freshman year. So I've been kind of, I don't know if involved is the right word, but I've known about UTK MUN for about 6 years now. I've gone to, I think, 8 conferences is what I figured out. 8 conferences thus far, if we count the Elon Training Conference as one of those. Got a gavel at that one, but it's also a training conference. But then I've also gotten a verbal at Unk-Munk and a verbal at Nixik.
Wonderful.
And I'm also the membership chair here at UTK MUN. I've been traveling so much this semester.
Yeah, there you go. So why did you choose to run for office, and why vice president specifically?
So, as I just said, was membership chair this past year. I had a lot of fun, like just on exec, but also I kind of liked being able to maybe help influence the direction of the club. And then when I was thinking about what I wanted to actually run for, I realized that my favorite part of UTK MUN at this point is like traveling and how much fun we have on traveling, but also like, trying to win awards and being a better delegation. And I know vice president does a lot with obviously like how we approach conference and competition. And I think I could do a good job when it comes to like helping improve that as well as keep going what is already good.
For sure, definitely. So as you've noted, the vice president is essentially our team's travel coach. What is one lesson you've learned from a conference that you would impart on the team?
So one lesson I've learned that I would impart on the team, I guess I wouldn't say this before a conference, but a thing that I guess is good to say after Cho month, so maybe it's fresh on the mind, is you kind of got to take some things to the chin. Like, you're kind of going to get punched in the face every time you go, whether it be not getting an award, your directive not passing, getting getting steamrolled by backroom. You're going to have something that kind of sucks, and you kind of just got to keep going. Like, you can't give up, and you can still get awards even if they hit you with like some terrible results happen on Friday. You can still win an award by doing well on Saturday. So
yeah, for sure. Definitely good to keep that in mind, especially after this catastrophe of a Choman. So what qualifications do you have for vice president?
So in terms of qualifications specifically for vice president, starting with just like a base thing away from, say, competition is I've been in the club for quite a while. I've gotten to see how it runs. I've also been on exec already. So I know how exec works. I know how a lot of like getting things changed within the club, whether it be constitution or just starting kind of better practices or organizing meetings and stuff like that. But going more towards vice president itself, as I said before, I've traveled to 8 conferences from, say, Elon which is a lower tier conference, or that was a training conference. But I've also gone to UNCMUNC, which is more mid tier, as well as NICSIC and Choman, which are both higher tier conferences, as well as in big cities, which is a little bit more logistically challenging. So I think in terms of like travel, I'm very experienced with it. I kind of know how it works, as well as I think when it comes to MUN, I like to think I know a lot about Parley Pro, as well as just how to debate, like how to be liked within committee, how to get people to work with you, and some of the, like, say, power deli things without actually being a power del. So I think a lot of my qualifications just go into, I feel like I really know the ins and out of competing as well as just travel logistics at this point.
Yeah, for sure. So along with ability as delegate, the most important qualification for vice president is a good teaching ability. What experience do you have in this regard, and how would you put it to work to improve the team?
So when it comes to teaching in this club, I have ran as membership chair a lot of the activities that we've done in our weekly meetings on Thursdays. So I've done ones where we run it as a smaller scrimmage, or I give people a topic and then we focus on certain things such as backroom notes, directive writing, merging, debate, things like that. I also helped, it was made a bit on the fly, but I still think it went well enough, was when I did Jeopardy with Parley Pro. I think if I could refine and do more things kind of like that, get people interested. So I've already had some experience teaching people the ins and outs of MUN and Parley Pro and procedure already, as well as I ran, I believe it was 2 or 3 meetings, maybe it was only 1 or 2, I can't remember exactly, but I ran a couple meetings this past year for our practices this past year on Tuesdays.
Yes, for sure, and I'm sure you did a better job than I did. So what do you think is your strongest quality as a candidate, and what do you think is your weakest?
So my strongest quality as a candidate, at least in this point, is I think just it's probably a very basic answer, but just kind of my experience. I've traveled a lot. I've been in a lot of different types of committees. I feel like I know how GA works. I feel like I know how specs work because I've been in a GADHOC, that was a spec GA as well as I've been in many crisis committees. So I think the fact that I've kind of been through every single part of Model UN, as well as know a lot of how the circuit works, I think that's a big part in teaching people how to get better at Model UN, whether it be the kind of like social political aspect of it or it be the actual procedural like writing aspect. I think that's my strongest, that would be my strongest quality. And then when it comes to my weakest quality, I think sometimes, I've said this before, it's like I have a hard time per se like letting people down when it comes to, say, travel. I would have a hard time saying, unfortunately, you haven't been selected for this in terms of travel. Or especially when discipline comes along, I do believe I could step up when needed, but it's hard to do the immediate jump of I need to deal with that now. So when it comes to like letting people down in travel or having to let them down when it comes to competition style things, I think I would have a hard time with that. But also, I've been working on that in a lot of aspects. So
Yeah, for sure. So our last two vice presidents both instituted major changes to our training program. What would you change about the current program? And please be as mean as you want.
I don't want to be super mean. So this would be a thing that this one partly. So I've got a few ideas. This one already exists, but we struggled with it partly just because you've been doing a lot of theater things, so it was harder to see all of it in person. But we had a couple conferences where we sent people who told me that they didn't know how MUN worked. Like, they literally knew nothing about it. That happened at VIX, and then I know somebody else who dropped out of Dog MUN for the exact same reason. So I think we need to go back to, you aren't able to travel if you did not go to the practice or scrimmage beforehand. And that's simply just like a thing of, I wouldn't want somebody to travel not knowing anything, and then they have to sit in a committee where they weren't able to even have a slight knowledge about for the next however many hours. I think a weekend is like, is it 12 hours on a weekend? Maybe.
Yeah, usually like 10 to 12, something like that.
Yeah, I would hate to do 12 hours of something that I went into knowing nothing about, and it's a debate club where people are getting fired up and I am simply lost. So I think we need to bring back a little bit of, if you're going to travel, you have to go to these things just to make sure you're prepared and you know what you're doing. Because I wouldn't want to be embarrassed or bored at committee. Another thing, I've talked with another one of the vice presidential candidates about this, because we both had a very similar or same idea, where essentially what a lot of the other schools do, such as, I know American and Georgetown both do these, obviously very high level, but they have like very specific training things. So I liked what you made this year, but I think if we have this is our directive practice. It's a PowerPoint. It can be used literally every time. Maybe it has some alterable elements within it, such as like, you can change what a committee topic would be if you're practicing. But very specific laid out training plans for each part of MUN, I think that would help, because it would also just give us something like, there's no risk of forgetting something where it's like, we're doing directive practice, but I forgot to tell them that, hey, maybe you don't want to do 16 subclauses until we're already there. So I think having a super laid out plan that we can do and carry out within an hour to an hour and a half if we ever need to like increase training, or if it's like some other type of training experience, I think that would be a pretty solid idea to do. As well as, I don't know the exact format yet because we've tried it several times, but I think we have to change what we're doing during the Thursday meetings. Because while I'm sure everybody loves 16 QR codes and then a small activity that was made sporadically during the exec meeting, sorry about that, guys. I think there is a level where we can honestly, we need to be going more in-depth during meetings, because that's where most people attend. And then Tuesday practices run almost like something that you did at the very end of the year, where we just do a mini scrimmage. Because when we did a mini scrimmage, I felt like people learned how it worked. We were forced to merge. We were forced to write a backroom note. You can confirm whether or not this isn't what happened.
I believe so, yes.
Yes, I think we were forced to write a note. We were forced to write a directive. We were forced to combine directives like staple pages, much like what happens in a real crisis committee, as well as all debate at the exact same time. So I think having those mini scrimmages during our practices is good, but during our actual meetings, we need to do more of the lesson plan type thing, like I mentioned earlier, because there's just more people able to go to those, and they're a little bit more concrete, I feel like. And we have talk about this and then lesson plan, and then Tuesday is just a full thing of mini scrimmage and maybe focusing on a specific element if that's what we wanted.
Yeah, for sure. So as you know, our elections are ranked choice voting. So of your three opponents, Zane Howard, Will St. Clair, and Lauren Turner, who will you be marking as your second choice on election night?
This would be Lauren Turner's fourth position.
Lauren Turner is currently running for all four positions, yes.
All right, I love that. So who I would mark second right now would likely be Will St. Clair. And the reason for that being is, he, while still pretty green, he is only a first year in the club. He has traveled, I think, to every conference this past year. And he's also done, I believe, he's done specs that he did at Chomun. I know he's done Crisis, and I'm not sure whether or not he's done GA, but he's definitely familiar with how GA works because his spec was in GA. So I would put him second because while, again, as I said, new, he knows a lot of things about MUN. He's obviously very passionate about it and everything he does, as well as I think Zane would be a really good vice president, but as of right now, he's the SecGen for 10 MUN 2. And SecGen requires so much. In my opinion, it's the hardest job in exec by a long shot. So, and it requires so much attention. And as soon as we got towards the time of 10 MUN, even if it's at the beginning of the year, I would find it, even if I was SecGen, I would find it impossible to do both positions at the exact same time, just because it's such a heavy workload. So that's why I would put Will Sinclair as my second.
Yeah, definitely understandable. So the vice president is also in charge of the planning of scrimmages. You've talked a little bit about this, but do you have any planned reforms for our scrimmage system? If so, what?
So for our scrimmages, one big thing, and this isn't, I guess you would say, a big reform. One of them would be, I feel like we kind of have, while planned who will be doing the scrimmage, sometimes they feel very sporadic, as in we just don't have enough notification. So I think in terms of like the MUN calendar, as of what I know right now, the true MUN calendar isn't really available to anybody but exec. And if it is available to other people but exec, I don't think anyone knows about it except for the exec board. So I think in terms of calendars, we need to, at the very beginning of the year, we need to make it as far as we can with as many things as we can so that we actually have time to put in place these scrimmages. And then once we go into it, we need to bring back awards. I know Ahmad did that this past time, but awards are important not only for helping people like morale-wise, know that they did a good job. I think it's important for this club's metrics of things like NICSIC, Chomun, more competitive conferences. I think it helps us know who might be a good delegate where when we're going to these competitive conferences where a big idea is awards at them since they're ranked so high on best delegate. And then lastly, I think what we need to be doing when training for scrimmages is we need to do I think everybody should be keeping notes on people. And while it's more difficult, we should be doing it almost like chairs do at, say, a real conference like Chomun, where they're doing like tracking of delegates, because I think it would be important after a scrimmage to be able to sit down with each person that not only ran the scrimmage, but also participated in it. And we're able to tell them, here were the comments about how you debated that were good, and here's what was maybe not so good, and we know what to work. And then that would also help us know what to work on at practices.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a long one, so bear with me. According to the Constitution as it stands today, it is the responsibility of the vice president, in consultation with the president, to decide the travel schedule each year. Previous vice presidents have used a variety of different methods to decide which conferences we go to, including having a club vote, just automatically repeating the previous year's roster, or simply sitting down one-on-one with the president and settling it just the two of them. How would you choose our schedule? And are there any conferences we went to this year, such as perhaps one this past weekend, that you would not like to return to, or any we didn't attend that you would like to attend?
So in terms of how we would actually choose them, I do think it's very important to include the entire club in how we choose, because a lot of what we do as a club is very democratic, as well as the fact of exec isn't the only one who travels. Some people on exec maybe don't travel, but they are still on exec I know we have certain members now who just may not travel, but they still do a good job. So I think when it comes to actually traveling, the entire club should be included. But I think before and after, or mainly before voting, vice president and president should sit down together and decide how each conference would be approached if we were to go to it, so that it wouldn't be just a general, we're going to Chomun, and then we'll figure out how many people to pick. It would be a thing of let's say for next semester, the ones that we usually go to are this past year we went to Dogmun, now Archmun, Nixik, and Unkmunk. We could, vice president and president could sit down and say, Unkmunk could be one of the, here are the options that are likely to be voted on. Unk is one of them, but as it stands right now in terms of like housing, we could only send 12 people. So when it's presented to the club, it would say Unk 12-person delegation. And so that's the way that I would look at least choosing it. Now, for ones that we did go to that I don't think we should go to anymore, while it was a ton of fun, and I think some people had better experiences than I did, I think I find VIX less valuable than others do. I had a lot of fun. Don't get it twisted. That's definitely one of the most fun conferences on the circuit. But in terms of competition and how things are ran, it felt a lot like my Elon committee freshman year where I did not learn very much. It was like a little better, but I mean, I had my chair tell me, hey, I like that you have hooks. I don't care what you say afterwards, and things like that. So to me, very anecdotal, but also I heard other people have similar complaints. VIX feels less valuable as a conference for us to go to than maybe other ones around the same time. In terms of CHOMUN, which happened this last week, there were quite a few bad experiences. Mine was, I would say, very mediocre, but there were a lot of pretty bad experiences. It was run a lot less well than I thought a higher tier competitive conference would be. I know you have a lot of feelings about it being an old conference, not a good conference, and I would agree. So I think, in my opinion, on CHOMUN specifically, I would not be opposed to doing it. This would obviously be up to a club vote, and it would be kind of a specific, I don't know if we've ever done this kind of thing before, but I wouldn't mind if the club decided to send, say, a 4-person super team to CHOMUN who would be completely ready to kind of be Power Dells. The goal of it is awards because it still is a higher tier conference with opportunity for us to do better on best delegate rankings. But we only send people who are ready to be super competitive and maybe even have increased training beforehand as that. But I wouldn't want to send another large delegation because it was expensive, and it was expensive for a mediocre conference. And I'll do quick ones. Sorry, I've been talking a lot. Quick ones that I would want to see us go to, or at least I have entertained the idea to go to. I think Hoosiermun would be a ton of fun. Indiana came to 10-mun, and they were also plugging 10-mun a ton. And I heard Hoosiermun was actually quite fun this past year. Apparently Birdmonk had pretty good reviews. And those are the main two that I can think of just because. Also, I don't want to go to Sunmun. Unless they move it to Gainesville, no reason to drive 12 hours for that conference, even if it's kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely. So voters expressed a desire to see UTK-MUN return to the best delegate top 20 as we were in spring 2022. How would you accomplish this?
So I think what we need to do to accomplish being in the top 20 is we kind of have to figure out how we want to present ourselves to other delegations as well as to ourselves. I feel like when we look at delegation or schools like Florida State University or Georgia, we see these upper ranked schools, but they still have a good time with each other. They're still friends, and they still maybe know how to party a little bit. And I think if we can find that balance, it's a big ask, but if we can find the balance that they have, or at least move towards that, that'd be a big part of it. And a lot of that goes towards really taking things seriously. Because I feel like we take things seriously now, but there is a point where it feels like we sometimes enter a conference feeling very nonchalant. I think we should always enter with the idea of we want to win and we know how to win. So everybody being fully prepared and possibly even doing a little bit further practice than we do currently before conferences. Making it almost a requirement per se to have a scrimmage before conferences. And the meeting being where you have to fully flesh out your crisis arc, even if it takes longer. So if it means increased time for practices, I'm not opposed to that if it means that we can see ourselves return to being on best delegate in the top 20. So I think it's a big atmosphere change and the way that we approach training and approach conferences.
Yeah, for sure. One final question. Will you accept the results of the election if you lose?
Nope, stop the steal.
Wonderful. Glad to hear. All right, Nathanael, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to wrap up here, but first, the floor is yours for the next 45 seconds. What's your message to voters?
My message to voters would be vote Nathanael, vote me for vice president. I think it would be awesome. I've done a lot of travel. Also, I heard rumors of Fortnite Friday from several other people that have been interviewed. I think we should definitely do Fortnite Friday. This is another endorsement of that. I don't know who needs to hear it.
I think that's up to 5 now.
Oh, 5? Okay,
Five,
Fortnite
yes.
Friday, 5. We're getting pretty high up there. Keep it going, y'all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you again to Nathanael for coming on the show. Stay tuned and we'll have the rest of the interviews with the other candidates in this episode. Hello and welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. I'm Caleb Lance, and this is the final in our series of interviews with our vice presidential candidates. I'm joined today by Zane Howard. Zane, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, Zane, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself while I get the questions pulled up?
All right, so I am currently a sophomore. I am the current section for 10 MUN as well as the former chief of staff for Volman 10. I've been doing Vol Unit United Nations for about 7 years with a mix of both high school and college experience.
Awesome. So why did you choose to run for office and why vice president specifically?
Initially, I only really chose to run because Nishant put some sort of faith in towards me, and I was really inspired because if he had faith in what I could do in that position, I believe that there's probably other people in the club who share similar sentiments, and I want to be their voice.
Yeah, for sure. So the vice president is essentially our team's travel coach. What is one lesson you've learned from a conference that you would impart on the team?
I think one of the main things that I've taken from conferences is that you're never really going to expect it to go 100% every time. There's always going to be some sort of aspect that's not going to be able to be accounted for, and being able to have that pivot ability is a vital aspect that would be necessary for the team to have moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. So what qualifications do you have for vice president?
I believe, firstly, my just time and length with Mali United Nations helps me have a clear idea of how certain things should go. Just having that length of time means that I've been around the circuit and have at least seen a thing or two. Also, I think just with being 10-month section, I think that I'm able to take a very unique view at conferences where a bunch of the other people who are running for VP may not have fully considered how conferences run from a full point-by-point planning process.
Yeah, for sure. So along with ability as a delegate, the most important qualification for vice president is a good teaching ability. What experience do you have in this regard, and how would you put it to work to improve the team?
In terms of teaching, I believe that I've done a pretty good job as we went through conferences of helping the first years kind of piece together aspects that they may not have initially thought about. One case of that is just with on the fly conference questions while we're actively competing of how are you doing? How do you think your arc's going? Do you think there's anything sort of that you would want to kind of change moving forward? Just being able to make those quick adjustments is something that I feel pretty good about.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think is your strongest quality as a candidate, and what do you think is your weakest?
I think in terms of weakest quality, I think that would probably have to go towards really, I think my mindset in some ways, because it's kind of easy for me to get focused in on kind of just my way how I plan. And so while it's always good that I have that mentality, it kind of overshines. However, I think it also plays into my strongest aspect, which is just the passion that I will bring to the position. I fully believe that there probably isn't as anyone who is engaged in this club compared to me that's running for this spot, and I believe that if elected, that passion will be clearly shown.
Yeah, for sure. So our last two vice presidents both instituted major changes to our training program. What would you change about the current program? And please feel free to be as mean as you want.
I think for one way, I'd like to actually set up a curriculum to go by and teach first-time and returning members of the club how to fully understand MUN. I think in some ways there's a good foundation. However, it feels like it kind of teeters off after just how do we plan an arc and how do we get speak instead of how can we find ways to really make ourselves stand out more. Big thing that stood out to me was that I could usually make an arc and receive good feedback on it, but it wouldn't really necessarily break front room. And I think finding those ways to kind of make Tennessee stand out on a wider scale is something that I want to see more of a focal point next year, regardless of who wins the spot.
Yeah, for sure. So as you know, our elections use ranked choice voting. So of your three opponents, Nathanael, Barnett, Will Sinclair, and Lauren Turner, who will you be marking as your second choice on election night?
I think if I had to choose someone, it would probably be Nathanael. I've been doing Mall United Nations for the same amount of time, so I have the very confident amount of faith that he'd be a very worthwhile and invested member of the club. Equally with the steps that he's taken in kind of activity planning for meetings on really trying to teach people what a mod is, what a round robin is, how can we make unique motions. I think he would provide a very fresh perspective for someone coming into MUN new.
Yeah, for sure. So as you know, the vice president is also in charge of the planning of scrimmages. Do you have any planned reforms for our scrimmage system? If so, what?
One thing that I'd like to see is the presence of awards coming back into play a little bit. I know there was a giant chunk this year where they kind of stopped playing into some of the committee selections, and I think that there should be a benefit to those who performed well in Mall United Nations. Obviously, they're taking the time to come out and really show that they want to be involved with the club, and so being able to say, like, hey, you got a outstanding at this scrimmage, you have a little bit more of a say in which committee you're placed into at this conference.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a long one, so bear with me. According to the Constitution as it stands today, it is the responsibility of the vice president, in consultation with the president, to decide the travel schedule each year. Previous vice presidents have used several different methods to decide which conference we go to, including having the club vote, automatically repeating the previous year's schedule, or simply sitting down one-on-one with the president and settling it just the two of them. How would you choose our schedule, and are there any conferences we went to this year, such as perhaps one this past weekend, that you would not like to return to, or any that we didn't attend that you would like to attend?
I think tackling this question first off, the way how I would like to determine conferences is by kind of ranking how much they would benefit the club as a whole. I think that while we are going to a wide variety of conferences, the lens that we're looking through them doesn't really feel to be that beneficial as a whole. Whereas, say for the particular conference we went to this last weekend, bringing 12 people didn't necessarily seem as a good idea when we're already kind of struggling to fit that. So shrinking that down, but still being able to take people is my sort of optimal plan. But ultimately that would kind of come down to what the general body votes on and what I'm also able to accomplish with a decision from exec.
For sure. So voters expressed a desire to see UTK MUN return to the best delegate top 20 as we were in spring 2022. How would you accomplish this as vice president?
One way how I think we can necessarily return back to the top 25 is by adopting a work hard, play hard mentality. It seems in some ways that the club, as much as we are a very tight and connected community, doesn't necessarily seem to lock in at the most appropriate moments. And it feels like we're kind of wasting some time that could be used towards better allocating our minds to not necessarily even wanting to go and win a gavel, but doing the best that we're able to at each conference.
Yeah, for sure. So one final question. Will you accept the results of the election if you lose?
I will not accept the results of the election. I already know that shifty Nathaniel's plotting something, he's scheming something, and honestly, William St. Clair, Lauren Turner, wonderful people. I'll accept it if it's them, would not accept it if it's Nathanael Barnett.
Not nefarious Nathanael, huh?
Devious planner.
All right, Zane, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to wrap up here, but first, the floor is yours for the next 45 seconds. What's your message to voters?
Honestly, I urge you to kind of wait to make your decision until after you hear everyone speak on Thursday. I think there's a lot of people who are very dedicated to the club and running, and so I think regardless of what the final results are, I am excited about the direction that the club's moving forward in.
All righty, good to hear. Stay tuned for the rest of this episode where we'll have the rest of our interviews, and then this is the final episode.
Hello and welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. I'm Caleb Lance, and this is the first in our series of interviews with presidential candidates. I'm joined today by Tristan Fields. Tristan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get right into the questions.
I'm Tristan Fields, first name James, little known fact. I'm from Scottsville, Kentucky, which is about an hour north of Nashville. I father a 4-year-old basset hound when I'm in Scottsville, and I'm a sophomore here at UT studying forestry.
Wonderful. So why did you choose to run for office, and why the presidency specifically?
When I came to UT, I didn't really know anybody because I'd moved from 3 hours, and my first few MUN meetings were like my first real moments of community on campus, and since then the club has given me so much, and running for exec or trying to get onto exec is in an attempt to give back to the club that has given me so much already. And I chose the presidency because I think that's where I'm best suited and that's where I can do the most good for the club overall, is in that position.
For sure, definitely. So as president, you would be the face of the club, not just to the university, but to the circuit as well. Why should voters trust you to represent the club?
I may not have the best track record with awards, so I don't really think that correlates to the president's office. I feel like I'm a pretty level-headed guy on the circuit. I have friends that know me on the circuit from other schools. And I haven't really had like an incident, I guess you would say. I feel like I'm a pretty friendly person and easy to get along with, and one that would like serve us as a good representative on the circuit when head to like when just traveling in general.
Definitely, for sure. So what qualifications do you have for the presidency?
I think it's hard-pressed to find an area of the club that I'm not involved with. Off the top of my head, I think maybe the only thing is the book club. So I think being involved with like nearly every facet of the club and being familiar with so many members would really give me an advantage at like helping facilitate exec and running those facets of the club and making them efficient and as beneficial to the club as possible.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So the president has many responsibilities that can often be very time-consuming. Do you have any other extracurricular commitments that may impact your ability to prioritize the club?
I'm in all campus events, which our biggest time commitment is homecoming in the fall, which is one whole week. But even then, that's not like a serious time commitment to the point where it would take away from my responsibilities as president of the club. Outside of that, I study forestry, which, to be honest, is not that intensive of a major. And like I might get a job, but even then, it's going to be entirely dependent on booking that around my existing class and club schedules. So I don't think there's anything to worry about with a time commitment.
Awesome, good to hear. So what do you think is your strongest quality as a candidate, and what do you think is your weakest?
My strongest quality is certainly, I just think, my familiarity and experience with the club. This is my 4th semester. Since I've got here, I've been pretty head first, diving into everything I can. Like I said, I know pretty much every nook and cranny of the club there is, no minus book club. My weakest point would just be, I guess, an inexperience of being on actually exec. But I don't think that's that large of a weakness, to be honest. I feel like as a person and as a leader, I think I could overcome that pretty easily.
Yeah, definitely. So speaking of exec, running exec meetings is a big part of the president's weekly responsibilities. Would you make any changes to the way exec currently functions if elected?
I'd still keep, a number of closed exec meetings, but I don't think it's a bad idea to have an open exec meeting that would function as more of like a show and tell, like maybe every 3 weeks, like once a month, every 3 weeks. Just a few times a semester where the general body could come and see like what exec does and, like behind the curtain, I think, just some transparency between exec and the general body would be nice, I think, and would be my biggest change.
For sure. So as you know, we conduct our elections through ranked choice voting. So who will you be marking as your second choice for the presidential race on election night?
To be honest, I couldn't tell you for sure right now until I hear the other two candidates' platforms and like actually talk to them about what their plans are. I can't make like a full faith decision in either direction. I think they're both great candidates. I just would need to hear what their plans are to decide.
Definitely understandable. The safe answer there. So where would you like to leave the club at the end of your term if elected?
At the end of my term, I'd like the club to be bigger in size, as I think our overall issue is just a lack of members, right? A lack of numbers that prevents us from getting as good as we could be. So I'd like to leave the club bigger and in a better spot, not only on the circuit but on campus. I take great pride in going to university. I've been a lifelong Vol fan, so it makes me very proud not only attend the university, but you get to represent it on the circuit some. And so leaving behind a club that is in much more well known on campus and seen in a better light, I think would be my biggest goal.
Yeah, definitely. So voters have expressed their desire to elect a president who can obtain more UT funding for the club, rein in absent or inactive exec members, and handle any club drama before it gets out of hand. What's your strategy to deal with these issues?
So dealing with absent exec members and just any conflict, I myself am not scared of confrontation. If I do win the election, my first exec meeting is going to be sitting everyone down and essentially saying we've got to lock in as an exec, and you can't be meandering off into just the abyss, or I'm going to bring this to everyone else's attention, just because I think Ahmad's done a great job of picking up where certain exec members have dropped off a little bit, but I don't think that should be something the president should have to do, because they should build an exec team that is pretty committed to their job. In terms of club funding, I think ultimately the club sovereignty from the university is incredibly important, but I do think we could be better connected with leadership in the poli-sci department. I'd like to establish maybe weekly, bi-weekly meetings with Dr. Morrison and is it Dr. Ring,
The department head?
Yes.
Dr. Prince.
Dr. Prince, yeah. Okay, I'd like to meet with him on occasion and just let him know what we're doing. But I think you just got to build that relationship back that we kind of lost with the sanctions and whatnot, the lack of trust. And I think with that, we would have more leeway in terms of asking for funding. There's also, just making sure we explore every avenue and working with whoever ends up being treasurer to ensure that we've taken every measure we can to procure as much funding as we can.
So the president appoints 3 other members of exec. No voters expressed concerns about the next senior advisor, but they did express that they wanted to see a secretary who would organize and streamline the G Suite over the summer, and a treasurer who would be able to balance the costs of 10 MUN with the costs of socials. So you don't have to name who you intend to appoint to these positions, but how would you ensure your appointments to those positions can accomplish these goals?
Okay, in terms of secretary, I also have the desire to see the G Suite reorganized and streamlined. I mean, we have 3 copies of the Constitution sitting in the same folder, not one of them marked as the primary copy. And I think just picking a secretary who I think would fully commit to their role, and then working with them myself to go through and decide how everything should be sorted, and kind of archiving the old stuff and bringing the new stuff forward. Just getting on a Zoom call every couple days until that's done, and spending an hour or 2 on it at a time until we do get it all the way worked out. In terms of treasurer, like I said, we've got to get more funding from the school, and I think I would be able to do that by establishing that connection with the university again. I don't think it takes any certain background to be a successful treasurer. I just think it takes the commitment. And I think the 10-month issue not necessarily will solve itself, but will certainly benefit itself as 10-month grows. Will bring in more income. And same thing with Volmon. Do you mean social in terms of club socials or 10-month socials?
The response they put on the poll was just balancing costs of 10 MUN plus socials was all they wrote.
So I'm not aware of the cost to profit ratio of 10 MUN. I'd like to think we turned somewhat of a profit, but I think
I believe we did at least somewhat. I know we broke even, I believe.
Okay, great. So I think the biggest expense obviously is the delegate social, which I'd like to work with Zane, and I already have in some capacity. at finding a reasonable location and price point for that. But I think just we have like staffing 10 months better and improving the conference year after year will slowly wipe out the issue of not making that much money off of it, because you're going to get more people coming in and you can charge a little more for delegate fees and whatnot. And I think that is going to tick up over time. It just takes a secretariat who will run an efficient and enjoyable conference for the circuit.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So one final question. Will you accept the results of this election if you lose?
Yes, without question.
Okay, wonderful. All right, Tristan, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to wrap up here, but first, the floor is yours for the next 45 seconds. What's your message to voters?
My message to voters would be just, think about what the club has lacked. And for me, it's the members and the commitment, and think about who is in this race and who has the experience and who has, I think, the know-how to solve these issues. And I think I am the best person to fill that description and that position. And I think that would be it. That is kind of wonky, but I think that's the best way I could word it on the fly.
Yeah, no, for sure, definitely. All right, again, thank you, Tristan, so much for coming on the show. We're going to have interviews with all of the other candidates for each office, and maybe one with Ethan Lindsey for Secretary General. We'll see, to be determined. So stay tuned for those, although they're probably in the same episode as what you're hearing right now. Hello and welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. My name is Caleb Lance, and this is our next interview in our series of interviews with the presidential candidates. I'm joined today by Ollie McQueen. Ollie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Caleb.
All right, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners while I pull the questions up?
My name is Ollie. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 to 6:30, I go rock climbing. On Fridays, 8 to 10:30, I used to play Fortnite until Jenny Lynn's Fortnite account got hacked from pirating Adobe Illustrator. And then Mondays, 9 to 11, I used to stand outside Brown Hall and protest Marvel Rivals until Jenny Lynn's account got hacked from pirating Adobe Illustrator.
Solid work. Okay, so as president, you would be the face of the club not just to the university, but to the circuit as well. Why should voters trust you to represent the club?
Well, Caleb, I'm really bad at lying, like horrifically bad at lying. And I know people always say a good politician should know how to lie. Counterpoint, I can't lie. Voters will know that I'm always going to be honest, because some people have a tell. My entire face, my personality is my tell. People have told me I have a resting guilty face. So I mean, I can't lie to the people at the club. I really can't.
Can't argue with that. So why did you choose to run for office, and why the presidency specifically?
Well, I love MUN. I mean, I joined my junior year of high school. I was never really like a humanities person. I'm an engineering major. But like when I joined MUN, I think it introduced me to a lot more things. I feel like my education is a lot more well-rounded. I think I know how to present myself better, how to give presentations better, and I think it's a really good resource to have for everybody, no matter your major. I just want to spread that love and passion.
For sure, definitely. So the president has many responsibilities that can often be very time-consuming. Do you have any other extracurricular commitments that may impact your ability to prioritize the club?
Yes, I'm in Society of Women Engineers, Biomedical Engineering Society, and I'm in the Heath Integrated Engineering and Business cohort, but I also have a Google Calendar, so...
Solid. Lots of love for the Google Calendar so far in these interviews. So what qualifications do you have for the presidency?
In high school, I was the president and founder of a local political advocacy club, so I have like my leadership experience. Yeah, I think I know how to run things.
Solid. So running exec meetings is a big part of the president's weekly responsibilities. So as somebody who's been on exec for the last semester, would you make any changes to the way exec currently functions if elected?
Yes, sometimes I go to exec meetings and I feel like I'm just sitting there for 30 minutes and then we talk about some stuff for 5 minutes and then leave. I feel like it's not very productive. I know we always don't have something to talk about. I know the semester I've been on exec, we haven't had a lot to do. And like we send out an agenda, but I feel like we need to stick more to that agenda and be more productive so we're not wasting people's time.
For sure, definitely. So what do you think is your strongest quality as a candidate, and what do you think is your weakest?
I think I'm a very ambitious person. I know what I want, and I know how I'm going to do it. My weakest quality, I'm a very busy person. Sometimes I get a little bit overwhelmed. My mind gets a little bit scrambled. that's why I had to make the Google Calendar. I kept forgetting things. But I think I've gotten better with organizing my time, organizing all my tasks. So take that as you will.
Solid. So where would you like to leave this club at the end of your term if elected?
I want to establish UTK MUN as a stronger team on the circuit. I know we've kind of dropped over the past few years, and I would love to be able to train our delegates better, make sure they really feel prepared when they go to these conferences, and make sure they know how to have a good time, but also how to thrive in committee.
For sure. So as you know, our elections are ranked choice voting. So of your three opponents, Tristan Fields, Lauren Turner, and Alex Ward, who will you be marking as your second choice on election night?
I'll be marking Tristan Fields. I think he has the great personality and the passion for MUN to be a fantastic president.
Solid. I'm sure he'll appreciate to hear that. So voters have expressed their desire to elect a president who can obtain more UT funding for the club, rein in absent or inactive exec members, and handle any club drama before it gets out of hand. What is your strategy to deal with these issues?
I love emailing. I'm not opposed to emailing people and begging them for money. When I was applying to colleges, I actually did that with all of my top choices, and I got a lot more money from them because I would email them and beg them asking for more money. And then as for handling conflict in the club, I think I'll just do it very straightforward, but I don't want to cause conflict in the club, so I'd rather do it individually on their own, but know that what they did isn't okay, that the club is supposed to be a safe, fun space for diplomacy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so as you know, the president appoints 3 other members of exec. No voters expressed concerns about the next senior advisor, but they did express that they wanted to see a secretary who would organize and streamline the G Suite over the summer, especially as UT's support for the Google system is ending this year. And as well as a treasurer who can balance the cost of 10 MUN with the cost of socials. You don't have to share specific names for who you have in mind for these positions, but how would you ensure your appointments to these positions can accomplish this?
Well, when I appoint Lauren Turner to all members of exec, I'm really just looking for someone who's unique, passionate, and knows how to bring fun and liveliness to executive board, and that's Lauren Turner.
For sure. So one final question. Will you accept the results of the election if you lose?
Yes.
Wonderful. Love to hear that. All right, Ollie, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to wrap up here, but first the floor is yours for the next 45 seconds. What's your message to voters?
So Caleb Lance, I have one question for you. Why do you hate Avery, Sinclair, and Lauren Turner? And frankly, I just think they're such fun, unique, whimsical people, and I don't appreciate the hatred you have for them. Is it because they're a duo? Are you jealous of them? Do you want to be in a trio? We have resources on campus if you need to report bullying. Is it because they...
I'm not sure where this bit is coming from or going.
Is it because they have Flag Day Tuesday and Push Day Sunday? Is it because of rock climbing Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Is it because Avery blew up your house in Minecraft?
She did that?
No. I didn't mean that.
Okay, well, once again, thank you for coming on the show, Ollie.
Anytime.
Yes, we will have interviews with all the remaining candidates in the same episode to the one you're listening to. Stay tuned for those. Hello and welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. I'm Caleb Lance, and this is the final in our series of interviews with our presidential candidates. I'm joined on the show here today by Alex Ward. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, Alex, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself while I get these questions pulled up?
I have been in Model UN for 3 years, 2 in high school, 1 collegiately. Mostly have been a staffer and a delegate. I've not really done anything else. I'm a Chem and Econ double major, and I play D&D every Saturday.
Solid. So why did you choose to run for office, and why president specifically?
Honestly, why not? Because it was looking like Tristan was going to be the only one, and it's no fun having an uncontested race. So I figured I might as well tell people what I think, and they'll hear it at a minimum.
Yeah, for sure. Ahmad, our current president, he ran for the first time for the exact same reason as a freshman, to make sure that the other guy wasn't running unopposed. So as president, you would be the face of the club, not just to the university, but to the circuit as well. Why should voters trust you to represent the club?
Honestly, I'm really boring. There will be little to no drama regarding me, because I don't do a whole lot, and I don't have a whole lot of conflict with other people. I just kind of work through any issues that we have rather than taking personal effect to it. But generally, I'm just kind of dull, and I think that a pencil-pushing bureaucrat is exactly what we need.
Yeah, boring is certainly preferable to a lot of what we've had the last few years. So what qualifications do you have for president?
Once again, I'm boring for the most part, and I would say relatively more responsible than a lot of my peers, given that I was raised by old people and spent most of my time with them. So I don't party, and generally I just kind of tell people how I feel about what's going on. And I think that's sort of what you need. You don't need to be guessing what the president is thinking. You should know actually what's going on in their heads.
Yeah, for sure. So the president has many responsibilities that can often be very time consuming. Do you have any other extracurricular commitments that may impact your ability to prioritize the club?
Besides playing Dungeons and Dragons on Saturday, no, not particularly. I go to improv on Mondays, but obviously
ISP or Cumberland Striptease?
ISP.
ISP. I've been a couple times myself. I'll cut this part out. Did I already ask what qualifications do you have?
I don't think so.
Okay, then I'll just cut that part out. So what qualifications do you have for president?
Generally, I'm pretty untested as far as that goes. Not been in a whole lot of leadership positions in the past, but I have been known to hound people until they actually tell me what I need them to tell me and get me what I actually need to get done, rather than just being like, please get it, and then they don't. Please, they don't. I'm very good at being annoying and making sure people are doing what they're supposed to be.
Definitely a valuable skill for the president to have. So running exec meetings is a big part of the president's weekly responsibilities. Would you make any changes to the way exec currently functions if elected?
I mean, I would just like to have more larger projects. As far as I've seen and heard, exec runs mostly as a bunch of people running their own positions however they see fit, and it just kind of vaguely connects to each other, or they will connect during meetings, but the vice president and the communications director don't interact a whole lot. And so I'd like to have more larger goals that everyone works together with their specific duties to achieve, rather than just having a communications director only focus on communications for the Instagram or something. I'd like to see more overlap over those jobs.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think is your strongest quality as a candidate, and what do you think is your weakest?
I'd say my strongest is generally that a lot of our members are fairly new, and I am also fairly new, so I can relate to them in a way that older candidates can't. But obviously that doesn't apply to some of them. But generally I think I can relate to people more, and I understand why people might have problems with MUN that they might want resolved but are too afraid to actually handle. Because I quit MUN when I first tried to join it, and I would like to avoid having that happen to other people. And I would say that as far as negatives go, probably my weakest trait would just be that I'm not always the most social person. It kind of comes and goes. And so there can be times where I'm kind of socially dead. But I think I can power through it.
Yeah, for sure. So where would you like to leave this club at the end of your term if elected?
Honestly, in my opinion, I feel like the club is it has an amnesia to it, where it is constantly forgetting what's happened a few years before it. And so it's not really improving upon itself. It's just it's trying to reinvent the wheel constantly. And I would just like to set up structures for the club where people have resources and they know what to do. Because I mean, like for me, even finding the constitution of the club was hard. It was hard to find that. It was like sometimes I think that we bring in beginners and we scare them kind of, because Model UN is such an esoteric thing where you have to have special language and all that, and that's intimidating. And then you go on the internet and then you see these super competitive delegates doing better, and then you're like, maybe this isn't for me. When in reality it's just D&D with extra steps. But yeah, I would just like to work on creating infrastructure that makes it more welcoming, as well as just kind of making it more like a turnkey type club where you can kind of just come into an executive position. You know what you need to do, you know how to do it, and you can iterate upon the like clear basics rather than like going based off of almost a rubric, just following the Constitution, having like actual strategies and methods of how to deal with problems and issues that people have found in the past.
Yeah, for sure. So as you know, we use ranked choice voting for our elections. So of your three opponents, Tristan Fields, Ollie McQueen, and Lauren Turner, who will you be marking as your second choice on election night?
Honestly, probably Tristan, I would say. He seems to have quite the passion for the club, and I think that his heart would definitely be in the right place leading it.
Yeah, no, certainly. I don't think anyone would dispute that. So voters have expressed their desire to elect a president who can obtain more UT funding for the club, rein in absent or inactive exec members, and handle any club drama before it gets out of hand. What is your strategy to deal with these issues?
So in terms of funding, I guess I would just continue to go through the avenues that we've been going through, as well as maybe looking for, it probably wouldn't be like a scholarship, but something to that effect where it's wealthy people who want to put their names on stuff, sort of supporting the club in that way, which I think would be good. I would also like, and this is on a smaller fundraising thing, I think we have some pretty great merch. I think people outside of the club would like the merch, or at least it would be nice to give it to people outside of the club, because then they're also a walking billboard for us. So I'd like to see us selling merch and stuff to non-members and just generally putting ourselves out there more than we do. What was the next part of that question?
The UT funding, rein in absent or inactive exec members, and then handle any club drama before it gets out of hand.
Reining in absent exec members, like, I feel like you kind of just have to put the cards on the table at some point and ask, like, are you too busy to do this role if someone can't do it? Because, like, I think there's a point where you have to stop being nice about it and saying, like, this is a problem that's hurting more members than just this one exec person. Because the club comes first. Like, no one person's ego or feeling should come before the overall well-being of the club as a whole. And the third was...
handle any club drama before it gets out of hand.
Right. Honestly, I would just like to sit down with the people, have a genuine conversation, maybe sit down over food so that they at least have something in common going on. And just sort of have a conversation where we talk it out and figure out where the root of the issue is. Because I feel like most conflict isn't actually what it appears. There's always some sort of underlying issue. And so I would just focus on finding what that underlying issue is, resolving that, rather than treating the symptoms of the conflict.
Yeah, for sure. So the president appoints 3 other members of exec. No voters expressed concerns about the next senior advisor, but they did express that they wanted to see a secretary who would be able to organize and streamline the G Suite over the summer, especially since UT is ending support for the Google Drive this year, as well as a treasurer who can balance the costs of 10 MUN with the socials. How would you ensure your appointments to these positions can accomplish this? And you don't have to give specific names of who you have in mind if you don't want to.
Well, I would like to interview them for the most part, as well as, especially for the secretary position. Like, that would be a hard thing for any one person to do. I know that. And honestly, I would also put in effort to help with that however I can. Just because I know that moving all of that and reorganizing it is not an easy task to do. And so generally, I would just look for someone who has organizational skills and has the time to put in the effort to work on that, especially with reorganizing the G Suite. I honestly think that that could be done prior to even the semester starting next semester, because there would be a 2-month period of no classes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for
that'd be
sure.
good. And then for the treasurer, honestly, just someone who's confident with finances generally. I mean, I feel like we've been doing pretty good. It's just that 10-month is very new and we haven't quite gotten all the bumps out. But, like, I mean, I think Ryan's been doing a fine job as a treasurer, personally. Because, like, we need someone who's just kind of anal retentive and is willing to be a stickler for numbers and the rules to to be our IRS, basically.
Yeah, for sure. So one final question. Will you accept the results of the election if you lose?
Absolutely, and then I will beg for a position in cabinet.
The time-tested tradition.
Yeah, I'll beg to be a secretary.
All right, Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to wrap up here, but first, the floor is yours for the next 45 seconds. What's your message to voters?
Honestly, I would just like to focus on establishing infrastructure for the club so that it can learn from its past. Because, I mean, like, Grant and other people who've been in the club have been amazing delegates and amazing members, but there's not a whole lot that we can show from it right now. Like, most people have not read Gunboat Diplomacy. Most people hear, like, a verbal explanation of what's going on, and they're kind of confused and they'll forget it by the next day. And I just think that, like, we need to streamline and make the club its own historians rather than the joking position of having a club historian. We just need to have a structure that it can follow. And then from there, people can improve upon it rather than inventing the wheel every year.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you again, Alex, for coming on the show. Stay tuned for the rest of the interviews with our other candidates later in this episode.
Thank you for tuning into our series of candidate interviews. If you haven't already listened to episode 4, our final polling analysis episode, I would highly encourage you to do so. If you're interested in hearing my opinions on the election, you can check out episode 6 as well, though I cannot emphasize enough that there is no polling data or information there. It is exclusively my endorsements and opinions.